All righty. So we are live, and thank you, Joe, for agreeing to be my guinea pig for this. So
Anytime.
I, I was scrolling LinkedIn as I often do, and there's no lack of people making posts with some humble brags. Like that's been part of LinkedIn culture since day one. That said, for probably better, you don't see very often people putting videos bragging about themselves. And in this ocean of mostly AI generated information that's flooding the feed, I feel like there should be some type of stage for really interesting folks out there who are in that stage where they're looking for their next opportunity for them to talk about like what makes them so amazing. So, I immediately thought about you being a wonderful candidate for this. I believe that your story is something that really can't be properly put on a resume. And since we are a lot more than just a resume, and our attention spans have been shifted to the point where most of us are willing to spend no more than 5 to 7 minutes watching a video, I figured why not try this. So I'm gonna call this video series Permission to Brag, P2B. And as the title implies, don't hold back. You've done some amazing stuff. Let the world know. So before going any deeper, Joe, can you introduce yourself? Can you give us maybe like a line describing who you are?
Thank you, Daniel. Man, humble brag. This is a very interesting idea. I think that there are a lot of people who don't know how to talk about themselves. And I think that that's actually the bigger problem that this aims to solve, right? Is that, and Daniel, I know that you have kind of sales, marketing background, entrepreneurial, all that. I think a lot of people who work in technical fields, especially, and by the way, let me actually do what you asked. Hi, I'm Joe Fitzgerald. I work in technical fields. Um, a lot of people who work in technical fields don't ever really have a training or incentive to talk about how good you are at your job. Instead, it's strongly preferred that you show how good you are at your job, which is well and great and fine once you're in a company and you're working in your job. Then you kind of have the skills to say, okay, I can show that I can do this work and I can do it better than anybody else. But how do I tell you that when I'm in a position where I don't have that job already and I need to go out and get that job? And in a world where on LinkedIn I see 793 people applied for the job that looks interesting to me before I saw it, it's going to be pretty hard to stand out in that situation unless you've actually taken the time to learn this skill. So good on you, Daniel, for thinking of this and trying to push it. I think this is great. I don't really have a ton of practice talking about why I'm great. Um, so,
That
with
is
that said, how does this
perfect. No,
work? I just do it. You talked about yourself
well,
before, Daniel. Give me advice. If you had 10 seconds of advice to give me before I try to talk about me, what would you say?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head earlier. It really very much should feel like a first date, right? You're putting your best foot forward. But before any of that, I think when, true, my background's in sales, and I always like to start any of these calls, especially when I don't know the person, when I'm meeting them for the first time, with some just ice-breaking questions, just to get all the tensions off the ground. So if that's okay with you, I got a few that I'd like to ask you kind of on the spot.
Hit me
Don't
with
have to overthink the answers. All right. So first one I got for you is, if your career were a movie, what would the title of that movie be?
Oh, that's tough. What's all right? So I think I'd be an action movie, right? Just maybe a little bit of a mystery action adventure movie that has like a more secret, deep meaning that you would expect just from seeing the preview. So in terms of a title, where would that put me? Um,
Go for it.
oh, I was going to say, unconventional success.
Unconventional success. Okay, we'll definitely be circling back to that to see what uh, prompted that title. That's an interesting one. All right, next
Definitely.
question I got for you. All right,
All
go.
right. Oh, I was
Oh
going to
no,
say
no.
maybe unconventional successes.
Oh, plural. Okay, okay. Again, we'll be speaking promptly as to why that's the case. But okay, great. Next question I got for you. It's what's your go-to karaoke song? Now I've seen you in karaoke, so what is the song that you graze the crowds with?
Honestly, I've got a lot of songs. It really depends what I'm feeling. But I would say if there's a song that I like to go do in a place where I don't know anybody and I'm just going to go sing karaoke, I'd go with Bob Seger and sing Turn the Page.
Okay, well, I won't have you sing on this. Maybe next time if the crowd decides that you should, I'll ask you. But good stuff. And then the last question I got for you would be, what's one weird skill that makes you a rock star at work?
Oh, um, I'm a super empath, so I know what you're feeling when I look at you. I don't know what you're thinking, but I know what you're feeling. And that's basically no matter whether you know you're feeling it or not, and whether you're trying to hide it or not.
Love that. Yeah, I can see why that could come very handy in, you know, the operational side of work too. Especially, I know what you've done in the past could be very high stress and dangerous at times. So, being able to understand what people are feeling, or at least have that sixth sense, has to be very valuable. So let's use that as a segue then. You mentioned the first answer to the question was that you would name your career movie Unconventional Successes. You just showed that one of your superpowers is that sixth sense of kind of having a gut feeling of what people might be feeling. So I want to spend the next minute or two just having you giving us a summary of what your career has been. What have these unconventional successes been? And you can pretty much start this wherever you find appropriate.
Yeah, it's very interesting is where to start. So I guess I'll just start with how chaotic my career's been in a lot of ways. And by chaotic, what I mean is I have worked in several different industries that a lot of people work their entire lives in, and just kind of shifted gears every 3 to 5 years for my whole life. So I got started as a teacher slash tutor. I was tutoring math and teaching people. I absolutely loved it. I did not like the pay that it offered and didn't feel that I could accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish in my life working in that job, which was very unfortunate because there was like just a lot of satisfaction, like helping people directly. And teaching and tutoring, especially tutoring, honestly, is one of the most direct ways that you can help a person. Um, so from there, I shifted gears and went to the next logical thing, which is aerospace manufacturing. Um,
Of
it
course,
just
yeah,
seemed to make sense at the time, right? So I
makes
should
total
mention
sense.
that I should mention in between these two things, I got a bachelor's degree in physics, which also, just you'll notice as we're going through this that none of the job titles I ever had was physicist. Um, it was another interesting decision slash experience where I really love solving problems. And what the problems that I'm solving are don't really matter so much to me, so much as the people that I'm solving those problems with and what the cause is that we're working towards. So helping people solve problems, that was cool. I got into aerospace manufacturing with this idea that I could just kind of walk in the door in an entry level position with my newfound degree and skill set and just talk my way into an engineering role somewhere at the company. And I tried really hard for about 2 years at doing that. And finally, I was forced to confront the fact that at a small private company, um, those openings came 3 times the entire 2 years I was there. And uh, the third time, I was encouraged by the president of the company to go apply for the job, whatever. He basically said I had it unless this one thing happened, and that one thing happened, which is that one of his engineers he already had wanted to shift to night shift. So it didn't work out. But honestly, I learned a lot in that job. I learned a lot about processes. I worked on like, I don't know, 50 or 60 different product lines there. So just going through, understanding workflows, processes, where breakdowns happen. I ended up getting my soldering certificate just because, and when I was there, I ended up working eventually like final QA on a soldering manufacturing line on these little parts. You'll get through a microscope all day like this. And if you're an attention to detail person, that's nonstop attention to detail where you know you can't mess up because the clients for these things are like NASA. Or we did some medical device manufacturing, and yeah, I remember having somebody come in from Medtronic to tell us that, hey, this little board you're working on goes in pacemakers that save people's lives. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And then you're
No
sitting there
pressure at
being
all.
like, I'm the last guy in line for this. I really, really need to pay attention. It doesn't matter if
Wow.
my eyes are bleeding after 7 straight hours staring in a microscope. Um, so that after that little adventure, I ended up joining into biotech because it's a big and growing industry. I thought to myself, what do I need? I need more opportunity. I need to go to a place where more is happening in that space and where I feel that there's going to be more roles that come and go. So I joined a publicly traded company in biotech and thought this is it. I was doing manufacturing still, so it was close enough, to my experience. And when I was there, they were importing a large chunk of operations, basically like a $40 million subsidiary of the company, from England to Massachusetts to do manufacturing there. And I came in on the ground level, just like I tried at my former company, but this time maybe I just had more experience, maybe it was better conditions or what have you. But I was able to rapidly grow in that company. I was able to get that engineering role that I wanted. I was given a process and quality manufacturing engineer title and opportunity. Eventually, I went through. We had 136 unique devices that we were building, and these things were cool. It was like liquid chromatographs, spectral photometers, microplate readers. So all of the things that you would see in like the forensic files of the instrumentation they were using to do blood tests or DNA analysis or whatever. We were making those devices. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Wow.
I learned a lot. I eventually moved over to technical support to work as an application engineer and was given some exposure to sales and marketing over there. But really, I wanted to work on R&D, like dev. That's what I wanted. And fast forward 3 years there, I had a lot of opportunities. It was good. I learned a lot, but I wasn't making it where I wanted to go. And I thought to myself once again that I'm at a small company. It's like I've had the opportunities I've had, but they're content with where I am, but I'm not. So I started looking again and I picked my head up. Biotech's kind of a brutal industry. Most of our clients were big pharmaceutical companies that
Hmm.
just don't really have the best ethics around their practices. And I don't know, it could just have been inside my head, but I just decided I didn't want to work in biotech and I didn't want to work for big pharma. It just seemed like it just wasn't the right place for me. So I looked around and said, well, hey, what else is out there? What's somewhat related? What's exciting? And that's when I heard of a little company doing internet service using radios. And I was like, huh? Really? That's cool. And just drawing on the experience I had working with optical systems that I had from Harvard Bioscience, those spectrophotometers, radio frequency connections aren't fundamentally different than optical connections. It's just using different spectrum. So I thought to myself, okay, I already have a good amount of experience in kind of the factors that are involved in how this company is doing internet service. The only thing I really need is to go learn more about the internet. And I already had some kind of like background. We're all internet users. I grew up in the era where I was tech support for my family for computers since I was 6 years old. So
Oh yeah.
I had this experience. I'd gone through a bunch of little things in my life where, like, I learned how to crimp a cable so that I could run a hard line to my basement to play games at some point. So when I joined Starry Internet, I joined it as a quality assurance engineer, which related to my old work, but really was just a totally different field. Again, thinking to myself, the internet's the next utility. Everyone's going to need it. Everyone who doesn't have it is like, we're trying to get it for them. Everyone who has it is trying to get a better internet service or better pricing or something. So I thought, you know what? Maybe this is really it. And Starry was a wild ride. It was also my first experience in startup companies, and I could not have been happier to work in the culture that we had at that Starry, where it was very smart people working to solve hard problems as a team, and I loved it. I ate it up. Um, I still remember walking in from my interview and just seeing the work that was happening, the big open office concept, all the engineers, all the equipment lying in mad piles, and people sitting around talking to each other, moving stuff around, trying to figure this stuff out. And I said, this looks like a giant laboratory of people just inventing something. And it turned out that it wasn't just the engineering tech that was doing that. It was the whole company was like inventing processes and workflows and sales pitches and marketing materials. Like the whole company was in rapid development by all these talented people. It was amazing. So I walked in, and Mr. Super Empath over here just went around seeing who was working on what, getting kind of a vibe and a feel for the place and a feel for the people, and figuring out who I could talk to when about what they were working on, and learn as much as I could about the product and about the company and about the ambitions. And, I ended up rapidly changing jobs, changing roles, changing scopes. Eventually, I landed in Washington, D.C. and met this guy right here, Mr. Daniel Leal-Bruce, among many other people. And if you want to talk about my movie title for my career, um, it's I walked into Washington D.C. as basically a tier 3 radio frequency internet support engineer. Um, that was the job that I was doing at that point. I was optimizing the RF links for the whole company. And I walked into that DC office, and instead of an office full of RF problems, which is what I could see from 400 miles away in Boston, I saw an office full of people problems, like people in wrong job titles or job titles that didn't match their skills, people without the right training or tools to accomplish what their tasks were for their everyday work life, people who were just so incredibly depressed and feeling insecure because they did not feel like they could succeed at their job when they got to work every day. And I was fortunate enough to be in the right state of mind and in the right place to take action on what I saw as the larger problem, and eventually turn things around dramatically. And Daniel, you know this. I know other listeners won't, but we took Washington, D.C. from being the worst performing market that was under review for shutdown to being the most predictable performance market at the company for 2 years. Um,
Yeah.
and I
No,
think
that was
that's a major
amazing.
accomplishment.
Yeah, I love that, and I mean it's such an unusual trajectory. So yeah, it's to your point, the movie title's ideal there, and what the point I want to drive across here is that somebody looks at a resume, and yeah, maybe they're seeing all these companies, but it's the why that's not necessarily transmitted when you're just seeing it in a piece of paper that's limited to one page, right? So the fact that you're telling us, the fact that you started teaching math and eventually were leading this hyper fast growth market in the internet service provider space, and it's phenomenal. I want to ask you too about something that it's not really talked about too much, especially in at least the content that I consume. But while you were at Starry, while I was at Starry too, Starry went through a lot of different phases of massive growth and then massive cuts, and it had this now kind of expected trajectory with rocket ship startups. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you were bringing you were able to notice that maybe somebody was had all the potential in the world but not working in the right role. So you clearly invested a lot of time and energy and emotion into your colleagues and the people who worked underneath you. Tell me about times of layoffs. Like how did that affect you? What, like, yeah, walk me through that. Luckily, I've never had to be the executor when it comes to layoffs, and I have been laid off. I get it from the employee perspective, but I mean, I can't imagine it being anything but a traumatic emotional experience, and I believe you experienced at least a couple waves of doing that. So can you speak more on that?
Yeah, and to your point, it's not something that is often talked about because people like to focus on the glamorous or glorious parts of their career versus the dark times. And I gotta tell you, the big layoff in 2022 was the darkest of dark times for me professionally of my life. And I think it just comes down to what your values are. I don't think really anybody enjoys those big layoffs, like the people who run the company, whether or not that you like or respect them or think of them or think about the human element with those people. They are people ultimately,
Yeah.
and nobody likes watching this thing that they built just be destroyed, even if they're still there driving it and planning to bring it forward. Um, my my philosophy has been um, I care a lot about people. And I care about the people I work with. I like helping people. I like to see people realize their potential and to learn and to grow. And that's also what I try to take to a company and to the roles that I've worked in is, hey, how can we help the company grow in the direction we're trying to go? And how can we help the people grow into the roles that will be needed, whether they're needed right this second or not, that align with their why? In other words, like why they're here, why they get up in the morning, why they've chosen to keep working at this company and in this position. When the layoff came in 2022, basically the screeching halt crash of Starry's funding, and we had to do a 50% reduction in force. I was I was just in a position of very suddenly being asked to lay off the people who I had been here with for 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, that I cared about, that I saw every day, um, and that I had seen from where they started and go through their growth journey to get where they were. It was extraordinarily painful. I had a
That
wicked time separating myself as the executioner from myself as the teacher. And that's something that it really took a long time for me to start moving past. I would say, honestly, Daniel, the cliff of like the half life of the trauma from this. Because I don't really ever think people lose their trauma. I think it works like radiation, right? It just kind of, there's a half life and then it gets kind of smaller relative to the rest of the experience for the rest of your life. But honestly, I
but
would
it
say the
stays there.
yeah, the half life of that damage was a calendar year. So I would
Wow.
say it wasn't until 2023, late 2023, a year later, before I really started to say like, okay, I've taken the worst parts of the edge off of this. I've seen most of the people who went through it, who like got laid off, find good roles or better roles or equivalent roles in relatively short order, and just realizing that it's not something that was ever within my control outside of accomplishing goals that I was set, and giving feedback on what the company was doing once I finally did get elevated into a senior position. And I continuously did those things the entire time that I worked at Starry. So ultimately, um, my teams were highly successful. I gave feedback even when it was not desired and not wanted on course, and that's what I could control. So just that focusing on what you can control and what you can't control is the number one way to start moving past that. And once you get past it enough to start like learning and growing and moving again, then you kind of are left with that choice of whether you stay and see it out, which is the choice that I made, or whether you say, okay, do I trust the structures or leadership in place here? Do I trust that this is the group of people I want to spend my time working with? And obviously, that's the choice that I made. So I was able to overcome those feelings and just say, okay, this is very painful, but how do we salvage as much of this and like the dream and the idea and the good part of what the culture was and bring it forward? And that's what I tried to do for the last year that I was at Starry.
Wow. No, that's thank you for opening up. That is again something that it's rarely talked about. It's an incredibly painful experience to be on both the receiving end and the executing end. And I do think between the two, we hear less of those folks that have no other choice, that are given the the instructions to do so. So another thing that I also want to help remove some stigma from in this podcast. I don't even know what I'm calling this. Whatever the heck this is. It's again that stigma around being laid off. I believe, especially in the world of startups, it's almost inevitable. If you're in that world long enough, it's bound to happen. I consider myself lucky. It took almost a decade before I experienced it, but I did. And just looking at my network, it's I probably can count with just my two hands all the people I know who haven't experienced that are in the world of um, startups. So, were you laid off of Starry? Or,
Yes, I was, and it was an experience. So I have never previously been let go from any job at any company. It's always been my choice, and it's kind of like similar in a way to the dating world again, where I remember at some point in my 30s when someone broke up with me for the first time. And I realized at that point, like it felt different. And I was really struggling with it. And I realized that I just had never consciously realized before that I was ultimately the one to make the choice to end all the relationships that I had been in previously. And so that first experience of having someone say, no, I don't want to be with you, to me was very painful. And it just hurt in a completely different way than being the one to break it off, which still hurts a lot if you've sunk your time, especially when you still care about the other person and nothing really negative has happened. It's just not where you want to be, or situations have changed, or you're not aligned on what you want your lifestyles to be, or what have you. Any of the reasons that people choose to go their separate ways. Um, with Starry, honestly, like I had been expecting to get laid off every month for 12 months before I got laid off. And
oof.
that was that was a really unhealthy cycle for me to be in psychologically for my state of mind. And and honestly, it had taken kind of like a personal emotional toll on me that I didn't actually realize that it had taken. So when it finally actually happened, it actually took a while for my emotions to catch up with the situation. Um, because it was almost like I'd expected it so many times that I had planned a response, like not intentionally, but in my head. And when it
Yeah, the
happened,
conversation kept
yeah,
happening, I'm sure,
so
over and
I
over
just
in
like
replay.
I I played out a lot of what my response would have been, right? And so that was good and well and fine. It uh, I think it was a credit to some of the people who stayed there and who were upset that the notion of me not being there anymore, which actually was quite a few of the people that I worked with, I was able to be there for them, which was important to me. Um, so I was able to accomplish that. I think some of that conditioning myself for that day was helpful for that task. However, it did take me a little longer than I would have desired to process the emotions of getting laid off because it was very upsetting. Even if the company isn't what it used to be, and you feel that you're not working in a place or on challenges that you want to be working on anymore, which was the case for me at the end of things there, it was hard. Um, in a weird way, I'm appreciative of having been laid off because I reached a place where I just wasn't working on the kinds of things that I wanted to work on anymore, and certainly not the environment that I wanted to work in anymore. And I needed to move on. So um, getting laid off, it's a trip. I finally had, all those times holding the executioner's axe where I never enjoyed it. There was this little voice inside my head that was like strangely gleeful because it was finally my turn and I got to just die from a company perspective and not have to keep going. So, in a strange way, I think it was like, and this might get dark here, but I think in a strange way, it's almost like preparation for death. Like,
Yeah.
as you get older and your friends all start to die off one after another, after another, after another, and your family and just younger people, older people, people you care about, at some point, I have to imagine when you're laying in that bed and you haven't been happy for a long time, your quality of life's been really bad, and it's like when it happens, if there is still something of you on that other side, I can just imagine the most gleeful dance of finally my turn, and I don't have to carry all this anymore.
Yeah, wow, that was we went down in deep, but it's thank you again for being so honest. There's that Instagram account, Nature is Metal, like corporate America is metal. Like this is a very uh intense set of experiences that we don't often think about, or if we do, we try to just brush off until it actually happens. So enough about the gloominess, the darkness. We're here today. Thanks for looking bright. I'm currently in Tampa, Florida. Beautiful day up here. I also didn't mention you're in Massachusetts, right?
That's correct. So it's nice and sunny out. It's not exactly warm, but that's okay. Did you guys
Get
just get
some.
snow in Tampa? Is that a thing that happened?
Not in Tampa, but it could have happened. I mean, Jacksonville, which isn't that far north, got pretty heavy snow. So wild stuff. But where I wanted to get this to was what's up next for Joe Fitzgerald? Like, what would you like to see yourself doing? What type of problems, if any, specific ones come to mind, or maybe even like who would your ideal type of employer would be? Ultimately, what my goal with this thing we're doing here is to put you out there and to have you stand out with the hopes that maybe that type of employer profile will encounter you and engage in conversation. So yeah, what's up next with you?
That's the question, isn't it? Um, and this is something that I've spent the last month and a half putting a lot of thought into. Um, and I've kind of stated this when I was talking about my 60-second story that was 8 minutes long about my career and kind of just who I am and what I do and what I've done. But every stage in my career has involved me learning more about how big the world really is and how much like larger and larger opportunities that there are out there and working in increasingly more challenging or vague problems. I guess bigger questions or bigger problems. And honestly, um, I I'm not tied to a specific area or industry. What I want to be at for my next company is someone who's focused on why. Hey, why are we here? What are we doing? What they're doing doesn't have to be specific. It can change even. It could be dynamic. It could be broad. It could be a company that works on 74 different things. That doesn't really bother or intimidate me. The thing for me is to be in that company that knows why they're working on the products that they're working on and has values as a company that align with my personal values. My personal values are, continuous improvement, always try to be better, uh, helping people, the a rising tide boosts all ships, right? Where if the people at the company are improving and getting better and able to rise and get that career growth, then the company will grow and succeed with the people. And just working working with people who are super smart on problems that are challenging, that that all move in the direction of a mission that I believe in. So that's kind of a broad statement and set of companies that hasn't really narrowed a lot there. But honestly, I wouldn't mind working for one of the big companies, but it has to be a big company that isn't completely owned by investors. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think
for sure.
like there's this delicate balance at the most senior level of every company between and the investors and the company, the people running the company, the C level. And that balance has to be, yes, you do need money, you do need the investors on a certain level. However, you need to stick to the reason why the company exists and trust that your customers will come with you if you have to make a change or you decide to launch a new product that does fall in line with why your company exists, and stay on messaging and stay on point. And that's hard. I think how do you find that out from the outside looking in? So that's a big challenge, and that's something that I would say is the challenge that I'm diving into now. Doing research, figuring out who's who, who's doing what beyond the surface level information that everyone knows about these companies, and figuring out who's really trying to, uh, just stay on mission and do right by their customers.
That's it's really not a vague statement. Especially there are companies who say they're mission driven, but that's just to check off a box on their yearly report. And there's some that do walk that talk, and hopefully some of those do eventually get to see this video. Another just more specific question: are you looking to stay in the Massachusetts area? Would you be ever open to moving to follow the opportunity? What's your mindset on that?
I like to experience different places in life. You know this very well, but I've already relocated in terms of a job once. When I moved to Washington, D.C. at Starry, um, I would I would explore possibilities elsewhere, and that's up to and including internationally. Doesn't bother me. I'm fortunate enough that my girlfriend that I live with is very flexible and open to moving anywhere too. So it's just about what's the quality of life going to be like, where we're going to go. I can go make friends. I can go build a network, build a group of people, and the world's pretty interconnected. So it's not like you ever really leave people behind anymore. So I think that I would be okay to go and be wherever the exciting opportunity is.
Love it, love it. Awesome, Joe. So just to wrap things up, the question that we've all been waiting for, at least I have: why should anyone hire you? Now, no pressure, but really all the pressure. Go.
Why should anyone hire Joe Fitzgerald? Well, if you're looking for somebody who will tackle any problem with passion and enthusiasm, and not stop trying until the problem is solved one way or another, whether that's a hacky temporary solution for a one-time thing, or whether that's spending 2 years during continuous company layoffs automating 90% of their former job, then that's me. Any job that I go and work at any company, my goal ultimately is to not be needed in that role anymore. And the way that I accomplish that is by bringing people up, building the process, building the people, automating what can be automated. Basically, what I want to do is arrange everything so that it can operate with increasingly delicate touches from me, all the way to the point where I can let go and have things continue to operate in my absence. So if you want somebody to solve problems, build structures that outlast the person, then hire Joe Fitzgerald. And you know what? If you like me and that's happened for that one problem, then put me on something else.
That's awesome. That was a great answer. Honestly, if I were a hiring manager, I would have snagged you right up. So, um, thank you, Joe. Thanks again for being willing to be my test subject here. It's funny when we started this chat, I alluded to this being a short video. In my mind, we are gonna have a 5 to 7 minute chat. But honestly, I'm glad that it's gone this long because I've been fascinated the entire time, and I've heard your story before. But the fact that all these minutes went by without me realizing it is awesome. So thank you again for opening up, for being vulnerable. And yeah, you are, there are A players, and then there's whatever category Joe Fitzgerald plays in, but it's a different league. And
J player.
whoever, yeah, J players for sure. So anyhow, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Honestly, LinkedIn is good. If you're a real person and not a bot, then that's great. I struggle with phone calls because my phone carrier just lists a number most of the time. They're not listing your name. If you do have my phone number and you do call me, text me. Tell me that you're a real
Okay.
person. Tell me who you are and why you're calling. And that way I will get back to you. However, if I'm just getting 26 spam calls a day and your number's one of them, I'm not going to answer.
Fair enough. Cool. So I will. I'll tag your LinkedIn profile when I upload this video, and that's pretty much all I got, my friend. I really appreciate this whole chat. This was so enjoyable. I am now pumped up to keep doing more of these, and I think I might have made it a little hard for myself having this be the first chat. There's going to be an expectation now of people with that type of background being here, but I'm sure within my network I can find. And also anyone, if anyone's hearing this or seeing this, has anyone that would be a good person just to share their story here, please tag them down here. Again, the whole idea here is to help folks who are currently in the stage where they're looking for their next opportunity to show off, to have that permission to brag. So, with that being said, I think that is the episode. And thanks for anyone who heard the whole thing through. Please send any feedback you have. Again, startup mentality is we're going to keep reiterating and learning from mistakes. So I'm excited to see where this thing goes. So, Joe, thank you again. Really appreciate you, and can't wait to see what the next big crazy opportunity is.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking me in for this. Uh, getting me out of my winter hole in the ground I dug for myself up here north in Massachusetts to actually get on the phone and start talking to somebody about who I am.
Anytime, my friend. All right, till next time.
All right, take it easy, pal.